I'm Neil Hamilton, I'm the leader of UKIP in Wales, and I'm a UKIP member of the Welsh Assembly. I've been a member of UKIP since 2002, and shortly after that, when Gerard was seeking to become a candidate for the European election in 2004, I was one of his supporters. Since 2004, I've done a lot of things in UKIP. I've been deputy chairman of the party. I was the European campaign director in 2014. I was elected to the NEC in 2011. I was re-elected in 2014. Then I became deputy chairman of the party, so I had to come off the NEC as an elected member. But then I was subsequently re-elected after that with 4,500 votes, 2,000 ahead of my nearest rival. And I'm horrified at what has happened to the party in the last year, since the Tommy Robinson issue came to the fore and has driven a wedge between people who've for many, many years have otherwise been very good friends, supporters and colleagues. I'm horrified also by the amount of distortion, misrepresentation and plain untruth which is being said, particularly on social media, about the NEC in all this, and perhaps my role in what is happening at the moment. And the purpose of this video is to set the record straight, perhaps to unpack some of the things that have been said about the NEC and about me, and to ensure that the truth is told.
Once I became leader, it came to my attention that the NEC is improperly constituted. The problem is that NEC members are continuing to sit on the NEC and vote on the NEC long after their terms have expired.
Well, Richard is frightfully exercised by the fact that two current members of the NEC, and I think he was referring to Alan Bown, who's given £2 million to the party over the last 20 years, and Liz Jones, who's a solicitor, have overstayed their terms on the NEC. As you know, NEC members are elected for 3 years. That can be extended in exceptional circumstances by the NEC for 6 months. And Alan and Liz have actually been on the NEC for 3 years and 8 months since they were elected. Well, this, in Richard's fevered imagination, is a conspiracy to do Gerard down, because they voted in the meeting to suspend Gerard in July, I think it was, or whenever. I wasn't on the NEC at the time. Well, Richard thinks he's a hotshot lawyer, although he's got no legal experience or, as far as I know, knowledge. The problem here is that we have somebody who doesn't really understand the law, who's trying to interpret it. Over the years, and Alan Bown has been in UKIP for 20 odd years, he said that we've frequently postponed NEC elections. Some occasions we couldn't afford to hold them, and on other occasions for other reasons. Of course, it's vitally important that an NEC should be quorate, and Gerard in April decided that he was going to stand down as leader, and so we had a leadership election on our hands. If at the same time we had had an NEC election on our hands, then we wouldn't have been able to have a quorate NEC to administer the leadership election. So Alan and Liz were allowed to stay on the NEC in order that the party could continue to function. This, in legal parlance, is known as the doctrine of frustration, that a contract can be frustrated by supervening circumstances which make it impossible to perform the fundamental purpose for which the contract was concluded. And I don't know whether Richard can understand those terms, but as a lawyer myself, I do. And he says that Liz's presence on the NEC and Alan's presence on the NEC at the time that the motion to suspend Gerard was passed was not valid. Well, he's plain wrong in law on that point. But even if he was right, it still wouldn't have made any difference to the outcome, because although Alan and Liz voted to suspend Gerard, effectively for, I suppose, bringing the party into disrepute by continuing to bang on about Tommy Robinson after the NEC had said that he shouldn't in the interests of the party, it wouldn't have made any difference to the result, because their 2 votes were not necessary in order to get a majority. There's nothing in this point And that's the problem here, is that we've got people who are getting issues totally out of proportion and making it seem as though there's some kind of vast conspiracy when no such conspiracy exists.
My experience of the NEC has been that most things, nearly everything that I've wanted to do, has been obstructed.
The key point in Richard's video, and his key complaint, is that, and I quote him, "Nearly everything I've wanted to do has been obstructed by the NEC." But my complaint against Richard is he hasn't told us that he wants to do anything other than appoint a deputy leader and appoint a new party chairman. You know, we've got London elections next year, we've got local government elections in England. Has he put forward any plan for fighting those? No. Got Welsh elections, Welsh Assembly elections the following year, very important to us because we can win on proportional representation in Wales, whereas we can't in England. Any plan for that? No. All he did was boycott the party conference in Newport and wreck our chances of launching our campaign in Wales. What about putting together a media strategy to counter all the lies and distortion about UKIP? We've heard nothing about that. Even the famed software package that he has been developing for some time, we have heard very little about that. So the truth of the matter is that as a leader, he's been looking internally and not externally. Unfortunately, leading a political party requires more than just making internal appointments and making the occasional YouTube video.
I've also never properly been given access to the ability to email the membership, and it's an extraordinary thing to be the leader of a party and not be able to email the membership of the party without being censored by the chairman of the party. The chairman of the party cited a rule that she claims means that she has the right to censor what I, the leader, say to the members of the party, but I don't accept that either. I think it is a misreading of that rule.
Richard claims he's never been given access to email the membership. Well, that is demonstrably untrue because we've all had emails from Richard in the last few months, including the most infamous of them all, and that is the email announcing that he was going to boycott the national conference. Well, you know, it's rather odd, isn't it, that the leader of a party should be able to use the party's database and communication system to send out emails that are actually designed to undermine the interests of the party that he leads. Personally, I was horrified about that email because I was hoping to launch the Welsh Assembly election campaign for 2021 in the new International Conference Centre in Newport, and Richard's decision to boycott the conference just torpedoed that.
He put forward a motion that anybody associated with or who had supported Integrity or generally Gerard Batten supporters, another group, not entirely the same group of people, should be suspended or expelled from the party.
Richard Braine also claims that NEC member Ben Walker proposed a purge. In Richard's words, he claims that a motion was proposed that said that supporters of Integrity or of Gerard Batten should be suspended or expelled. Well, that is absolutely false. The motion was to prescribe Integrity, but there's no question of proscribing people just because they supported Gerard Batten. If it did, they would catch me, wouldn't they? Because I was a supporter of Gerard way back in 2002 and 2003. No, it is true that Integrity was prescribed, and the reason for that was that it claimed itself to be, and I quote, a Labour-style momentum group. And one of its stated aims is to bring a proscribed person, Tommy Robinson, into membership of UKIP. Well, Integrity may now say that they've dropped the aim of bringing Tommy into UKIP membership. Well, it's very convenient that they've done that, isn't it? In which case, why is Tommy Robinson speaking as their special guest at their next meeting on the 2nd of November? It's quite clear that scrapping the stated aim of bringing Tommy into the party hasn't actually changed their intentions, it's merely disguised them.
Last weekend we saw false accusations in the NEC meeting against Jeff Armstrong, who's a very good man. He's been a magistrate for more than 2 decades. He's very straight and he's a very good, reliable person. And he was falsely accused of sharing vetting data for the NEC elections, which he hadn't done.
Well, Richard also claims that Jeff Armstrong was, and I quote him, falsely accused of sharing vetting data, which should be confidential. Well, clearly Jeff Armstrong did share vetting data, and he shared it actually with somebody who was hoping to be a candidate in this NEC election, Dalila Fern. He emailed her the details of every other candidate's vetting details. That surely cannot be right, and for a returning officer to behave in that way clearly disqualifies him from continuing in office. He has to be seen to be impartial between all candidates.
So Jeff had a list, and we needed to ensure that this list went out to members as it should. And since I didn't have the ability to email members, and I wanted Jeff to be able to send this email, I gave permission to Mark Dent to go into head office in Newton Abbot and take control of the email system there and ensure that Jeff was able to send this message out to the members, which he did.
Now, Richard Braine also claims to have, quote, given permission to Mark Dent to enter Lextram House, this is the party's back office in Newton Abbot, where all the party infrastructure is, and gave him permission to access the party's database in order to send out Jeff Armstrong's list of who the candidates in the NEC election were going to be. Well, of course, that was before the vetting process had actually been concluded, and the list included everybody who'd applied to be a candidate. So, of course, Richard had no power to give permission to anybody to enter Lextram House for an illegal purpose. And that is illegal under data protection laws. Nobody is allowed to access confidential data unless they have signed GDPR forms, which, of course, Mark Dent has never done. And as a result of Mark Dent, by false pretenses, getting this information from the staff at Lextram House, he then proceeded to lock people without any authority whatsoever out of their own emails, including the party chairman and other senior UKIP officials, so they could neither look at emails nor respond to them. That was a flagrant breach of data protection legislation, for which there are, of course, criminal penalties, and we shall be pursuing that with the greatest vigour. Now, in his video, Richard doesn't mention that Mark Dent locked people out of their own email accounts. He didn't mention that Mark Dent returned to Lextram House a couple of days later after we'd recovered control of the database and attempted by physical force to get into the building, and he had to be ejected by force. He also omits to mention that Mark Dent was himself an applicant for NEC candidature at the time. And it's clearly quite wrong for one of the candidates to be conspiring with the returning officer and the party leader to send out emails on the returning officer's behalf. Can you imagine a more flagrant conflict of interest, not to mention the impropriety of what had been done? So this is clearly a disciplinary matter for all three of them, and that will be pursued as well.
I witnessed on Saturday at the NEC meeting an NEC member, an influential one, pleading for his friend, who he's friendly with, not to be culled from the list of NEC candidates because he was a good chap, even though he fell on the wrong side of the NEC's ideas about who should be purged for political reasons.
Richard complains in his video that one NEC member tried, on grounds of his own personal preference, to speak up for one of those who has been disqualified and tried to get the NEC's decision changed, as though there was something wrong with that. Well, there are pleas of mitigation, of course, even in criminal cases of the most heinous kind in courts. So there's nothing wrong with an individual speaking up for somebody who he knows, who otherwise has things that disqualify him from office. But the NEC didn't accept the pleas of that NEC member. And I think I can guess who the candidate was, and it must be Alan Elder Brown. And the reason that we disqualified him was not, as Richard implies, because he was pro-Batten or on the wrong side. It was because he himself had admitted that he had raised money for Tommy Robinson, who was a candidate in the Euro elections this year, against UKIP candidates, including Adam Richardson, who was then our party secretary, who was the top of the list. And raising money for candidates who are fighting UKIP candidates in elections is obviously a complete no-no. So I really want to know, what is it that's going on in Richard's head that he thinks this is something which doesn't disqualify somebody from being a member of the ruling committee of our own party?
I understand that Ryan Waters, who has previously been on the NEC and is a very committed member, he's also a vet and he's a very good chap. And I understand that he was stopped and that he was removed from the list because he had said that he wasn't going to go to conference this year, and he said to other people, I don't think you should go either. And that's the reason he's been culled from the list.
Now, Richard complains that one of the applicants for the NEC list, Ryan Waters, was excluded because he encouraged UKIP members to boycott our national conference in Newport a few weeks ago. Well, how can you have on the NEC people who are not acting in the best interests of our party, but actually actively seeking to undermine what should have been one of the great showcase events for our party as a relaunch? It certainly undermined us in Wales, because we chose Newport as a venue for this conference, specifically because it was going to be the launch pad for our Welsh Assembly elections, which are going to be held in 2021. So if somebody wants to be on the NEC, I want people who are going to campaign for our party, not actively to do things which are going to undermine our party.
Kirsten Herriot, the ex-chairman of the party, thinks that she has the power to suspend me, the elected leader of the party. I actually suspended her days before she claims to have suspended me.
Now, perhaps most bizarrely, Richard recently has taken to suspending the party chairman and indeed other members of the national executive. Well, it's plain as a pikestaff that Richard, as party leader, has no power to suspend anybody, least of all the party chairman. And how can he anyway suspend people who are elected by you, the members, to the National Executive Committee? Only the chairman can suspend members under emergency powers where the facts call for it, where they brought the party into disrepute or they've done something else which is forbidden by the Constitution. Richard Braine has no power of that kind whatsoever, and any attempt by him to persuade you that he has is a deliberate falsehood.
So for that reason, I don't accept at all that Kirsten Herriot has the right to suspend me, the leader of the party.
Now, Richard also claims that Kirsten, as party chairman, doesn't have the power to suspend him. But the party chairman has the power to suspend any member of the party if the facts call for it. If we do something which brings the party into disrepute or which is of such gravity that it calls for urgent action, then the party chairman does have that power. Just look at Article 11(9) of the Constitution, which says in cases of exceptional gravity and urgency, the party chairman may, and I paraphrase, suspend members. So again, it's a deliberate falsehood on Richard's part, or perhaps, I don't know how long he's been a member of the party, he's never read the Constitution. If so, I'm telling him now, he's wrong. We've all heard of the term black propaganda. And propaganda comes in various forms. There can be the big lies, which Dr. Goebbels used to specialise in, but there are also not just acts of commission, lies that are told, but there are also misrepresentations which can come about by not telling the whole story, or telling it in a way which misrepresents the facts. I'm afraid to say Richard Braine's video is chock full of those.